What if everything we witnessed, the fairy tale wedding, the public engagements, the smiling photographs, was all part of a carefully orchestrated plan that Meghan Markle had mapped out from the very beginning? What if she never intended to stay in the royal family long term, but rather saw it as a stepping stone to something else entirely? According to Lady Colin Campbell, one of the most controversial and well-connected voices in royal circles, this wasn't a marriage that went wrong. This was a strategy executed to perfection. Lady Colin Campbell, or Lady C as she's known, doesn't make claims lightly. She's been writing about the royal family for decades. She knew Princess Diana personally. She's navigated the upper echelons of British society for most of her life. She's published multiple books about the royals that have proven accurate over time. When she says Meghan Markle planned her exit before she even walked down the aisle at St. George's Chapel, we need to examine the evidence. Her book, Meghan and Harry, The Real Story, caused shockwaves when it was published in 2020. But it's her subsequent interviews and YouTube channel where she's really pulled back the curtain on what she claims happened behind the scenes. And according to Lady C, this was never about finding love and settling into royal life. This was about building a brand, gaining global recognition, and then monetizing that recognition on an unprecedented scale. The evidence, she argues, is hiding in plain sight. Let's start with the timeline. Meghan and Harry met in July 2016. They were engaged by November 2017, married in May 2018, by January 20. Then 2 years after the wedding, they announced they were stepping back as senior royals. By March 2020, they'd left the UK completely. That's an extraordinarily short period of time. Now, you could argue that they simply discovered royal life wasn't for them, that the media pressure was too much, that they needed to escape for their mental health. That's the narrative we've been sold. But Lady C says if you look at the patterns, the behaviors, the decisions Meghan made from the very beginning, a different picture emerges. One of the first red flags, according to Lady C, was how quickly Meghan moved to reshape her public image even before the wedding. She shut down her lifestyle blog, The Tig, in April 2017, shortly after the relationship became public. She deleted her social media accounts. She stepped away from her acting career. On the surface, this looked like someone preparing to embrace royal life, leaving her old life behind. But Lady C argues this was actually Meghan creating scarcity and mystery. By removing her own voice from the public sphere, she made herself more valuable. She positioned herself as someone who'd given up everything for love. And crucially, she created a blank slate that could later be rewritten however she chose. The wedding itself, Lady C claims, was less about joining the royal family and more about the global platform it provided. 500 million people watched that wedding. Meghan Markle went from being a moderately successful cable television actress to one of the most recognizable women on the planet overnight. That level of fame, that global reach, that's not something you can buy, but it is something you can leverage. Lady C points to several telling details from the wedding period. The choice of Bishop Michael Curry delivering that long theatrical sermon that was completely at odds with traditional royal wedding ceremonies. The gospel choir. The choices that made it distinctly Meghan's wedding rather than a traditional royal affair. Lady C suggests these weren't just about personalization, they were about making sure this wedding was memorable. Talked about globally significant, because if you're planning to monetize your royal connection later, you need people to remember you. Then there's the behavior towards staff that we've discussed in previous videos. Lady C claims this wasn't just a personality clash or cultural misunderstanding. It was Meghan refusing to conform because she never intended to stay long enough for conformity to matter. Why learn the protocols? Why build relationships with staff? Why adapt to the institution if you're planning to leave anyway? For those of you watching who want to understand the full picture of what really happened, make sure you're subscribed to Royal Daily Report. We dig deeper than the headlines and bring you the truth that mainstream media won't touch. Hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss our investigations. The Sussex royal brand is particularly revealing. Harry and Meghan filed trademark applications for Sussex Royal across over 100 items in December 2018, just 7 months after the wedding. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was planning. This was building infrastructure for a commercial venture while still being full-time working royals. They wanted to trademark everything from clothing to charitable fundraising, from educational materials to emotional support services. This was a global brand in the making. And it was being constructed whilst Meghan was supposedly adjusting to royal life, whilst she was pregnant with Archie. Whilst she was undertaking official engagements on behalf of the Queen, the palace eventually shut down Sussex Royal after they left. But the intent was clear. They wanted to build a commercial empire using their royal connection. Lady C argues that Meghan was thinking about this from day one. The Vogue editorship is another piece of the puzzle. In September 2019, Meghan guest-edited the September issue of British Vogue. It was titled Forces for Change and featured women Meghan admired. On the surface, this seems like a lovely project for a royal to undertake. But Lady C points out that this positioned Meghan as a thought leader, as someone with opinions and a platform separate from the royal family. She wasn't just a duchess supporting charities, she was Meghan Markle, cultural influence. This was brand building. This was maintaining her individual identity separate from the institution she'd married into. And if you're planning to leave that institution, you need people to see you as an individual, not just as a royal. The Africa tour in September 2019 is when Lady C believes the final pieces fell into place. This was meant to be a triumphary, and Meghan representing the Queen in Africa, showcasing modern monarchy, doing important work. Instead, Meghan gave that interview to Tom Bradby, where she talked about struggling, about not being okay, about how difficult everything was. Lady C argues this wasn't a moment of vulnerability with stage setting. It was creating the narrative that would justify their departure. She was planting the seeds. Look how much I'm suffering. Look how unsustainable this is. Look how the institution isn't supporting me. When they left 3 months later, the groundwork had been laid. The public had been prepared. Meghan had positioned herself as the victim of an uncaring institution, which would make the exit look like escape rather than abandonment. The timing of the exit announcement is also suspicious. According to Lady C, they announced their decision to step back in January 2020, apparently without properly consulting the Queen or Prince Charles. It was done via Instagram and a website they'd prepared in advance. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision made in crisis. This was planned, prepared, and executed strategically. Lady C claims her sources inside the palace say that discussions about Meghan and Harry's role had been ongoing, but the couple jumped the gun deliberately. They wanted to control the narrative. They wanted to announce it on their terms, frame it their way before the palace could manage the process. This is consistent with someone who'd planned this outcome, not someone making a desperate decision. The speed with which commercial deals were signed is perhaps the most damning evidence. By September 2026, months after officially leaving royal duties, they'd signed deals with Netflix and Spotify, reportedly worth over $100 million combined. These deals don't materialize overnight. These negotiations take months, sometimes years. Lady C's sources suggest that preliminary conversations about these deals were happening well before the official exit, possibly even before they left the UK. You can't secure a Netflix deal worth tens of millions of pounds without extensive negotiations. Lawyers, agents, proposals. This was in the works long before they announced they were stepping back. If you're shocked by these revelations, you're not alone. This is exactly why Royal Daily Report exists, to bring you the truth behind the carefully crafted PR narratives. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into royal reality. The Oprah interview in March 2021 was, according to Lady C, the culmination of the plan. Not only did it generate massive publicity, over 50 million viewers globally, but it also cemented the narrative Meghan needed, that she was the victim, that the royal family had mistreated her, that leaving was the only option for her survival. This narrative was essential for the commercial deals. Netflix and Spotify didn't just buy Harry and Meghan's royal connection, they bought their story. They bought the drama, the conflict, the victimhood narrative. Without that, they're just another celebrity couple. With it, they're a global phenomenon. Lady C argues that Meghan understood this from the beginning. The exit had to be dramatic, it had to be justified, and it had to position them as courageous truth-tellers rather than opportunists. The timing of the Oprah interview while Prince Philip was in hospital, while the Queen was dealing with her husband's declining health shows, according to Lady C, that this was never about family. If Meghan had genuine affection for the royal family, she wouldn't have added to their burden during such a difficult time. The fact that they proceeded anyway suggests the commercial imperative outweighed any family considerations. Lady C also points to Meghan's history as evidence of a pattern. Her first marriage to Trevor Engelson ended suddenly, with him reportedly blindsided by her decision to divorce. Her relationship with her father broke down completely around the time of the royal wedding. Her friendships from before Harry have largely dissolved. The pattern, Lady C suggests, is that Meghan moves on when relationships no longer serve her purposes. She's not sentimental, she's strategic. And once the royal family had served its purpose, global fame, recognition, platform, she was ready to move on. Now, you might ask, what about Harry? Was he in on this from the beginning? Lady C believes Harry was genuinely in love and that Meghan leveraged that love to achieve her goals. She suggests that Meghan identified Harry's vulnerabilities, his resentment about his mother's death, his frustration with his role as spare, his desire to escape royal constraints, and positioned herself as the solution to all of it. Harry thought he was finding love and freedom. Meghan, according to Lady C, was executing a business plan. The evidence that this was premeditated, Lady C argues, is overwhelming when you look at it comprehensively. The rapid timeline, the brand building whilst still a working royal, the commercial deals signed suspiciously quickly, the narrative setting through carefully chosen public statements, the strategic deployment of accusations and the complete severing of ties with the institution once the global platform had been secured. None of this suggests someone who tried their best and failed. This suggests someone who achieved exactly what they set out to achieve. Lady C's most controversial claim is about Archie and Lilibet. She suggests that having children with Harry was part of securing the long-term financial future. Children ensure a permanent connection to the royal family. They justify the use of titles. They create ongoing material for content and public interest. Whether or not you find this cynical, it's true that the children have been central to the Sussex commercial strategy. The criticism of Lady C's claims is obvious. Where's the smoking gun? Where's the document that says Meghan's 5-year plan to exploit the royal family? That evidence doesn't exist, and Lady C admits as much. But she argues that patterns of behavior, the timeline of events, and her sources within royal circles all point to the same conclusion. And increasingly, even sympathetic observers are asking questions. Why did everything happen so fast? Why were commercial deals ready to go so quickly? Why does the narrative feel so polished and rehearsed? Why have Harry and Meghan shown no interest in reconciliation or compromise? Lady Colin Campbell's claims are explosive, controversial, and difficult to prove definitively. But they're also internally consistent and explain many of the otherwise puzzling aspects of Harry and Meghan's trajectory. If she's right, if this was indeed planned from the beginning, then we haven't been watching a love story that went wrong. We've been watching a business plan that went exactly right. Whether Meghan Markle is a victim who escaped a toxic institution or a calculating opportunist who used the royal family as a stepping stone to commercial success depends on which evidence you find more compelling. But thanks to voices like Lady Colin Campbell, we at least have the full picture to make that judgment ourselves. And that picture is far more complex and far more calculated than the fairy tale we were sold back in 2018.